Nabolon sent me to accompany some anthropologists and archaeologists, people like writers, photographers. I was introduced them with Chanquin Viejo from Naha. Naha in Maya means the water house. Chanquin, he was the last spiritual leader and the powerful healer and a shaman. And they were a nice friends, Trudy and Chanquin. I'm thinking the Fran and the Trudy and Chanquin, they had connection for a friendship by spirit. Yeah, one day Trudy, she said to him in the jungle, Chanquin, I don't want to live much longer than you. I hope I were to die before you died. It is my thoughts about Chanquin.
On December 23, 1993, Gertrude Duby Blom passed away, and 3 years later, Chanquin Viejo was also gone. Many of the people studying and writing about the Lacandones became increasingly saddened by what they perceived to be a loss of traditions, as electricity and eventually satellite television entered the community. The past 25 years has been a time of significant change. The Lacandones' way of life has gone from subsistence agriculture and religious practices to an economy based primarily on tourism. Influenced in part by the migrant farmers and ranchers that encroached on their land, and the missionaries who descended upon them to fuel the fear of uncertainty, many of Naha's residents began to believe that they needed to ignore their traditions and embrace the modern world in order to survive. In fact, it is only Antonio, the last elder connected to Chanquin Viejo, who carries the flame of the simple jungle life and the time-honored religious traditions.
Antonio, he is a very sensible man. He have a great spirit and very peaceful man, very friendly. And he tried to convince the young people come back to their traditions and customs, because in the last 20 years traditions they are losing now, especially after Chanquin died, you know. But I'm thinking he's a great man with a positive and powerful spirit.
Today in Naha, many families do much less farming, instead buying items such as canned sardines and salsa, instant soups with noodles, cookies, candy, chips, and Coca-Cola from local stores. They make bows and arrows, jewelry, and other crafts to sell to tourists in Palenque and San Cristobal. They also sell to tourists who come to Naha, as well as charging them for canoe trips across the lake and for permission to photograph staged activities. Many Lacandones have given up their tunics and traditional long hair so that they will appear more acceptable to the outside world. The mahogany trees that once populated this rainforest and provided the material for canoes, houses, and furniture have all been cut down and hauled away. Instead of ceremonies and prayers to the gods, there are community meetings where the practicalities of daily life are discussed and decided upon. The majority of people in Naha no longer practice religious rituals. A schoolhouse has been built, and many of the children are now being educated.
I think the biggest change is coming up with the generation right now, the young Lacandones that are entering school, and there's just beginning to be a migration of Lacandones to Mexico City and other parts. So there's younger Lacandones that are studying, getting a higher education, which is very important for these communities, because they previously did not have representatives within their communities that were lawyers or doctors, and I think that's a very positive aspect of the young people going out and getting higher education which means that there's a process of cultural loss, but at the same time there's a strengthening of the communities, and I think there can be in the future, in a certain sense, a rebirth of Lacandon culture.
But regardless of the immense changes occurring in Naha, when you encounter certain members of the community, there is still a quality that awakens a part of yourself and draws you in. It may be the recognition of their connection to the earth, their kindness, simplicity of life, generosity of spirit, open hearts, or good humor. Or perhaps it's the spirit of Chanquin Viejo that's still alive, being transmitted through other Lacandons. Regardless of the reason, we end up caring deeply and wanting to offer something back. And one of the gifts we can offer is to keep reminding them how much value their traditions have and how much their lives move us. The ancient Mayans used a greeting, en la quech, that means I am another yourself. Many Lacandons relate to each other using this philosophy. Spending time in Naha, you notice that everyone is treated with equality and respect. You don't sense any judgment or condemnation. Lacandons also seem to have the ability to see into the mind of the visitor and to have a sense of what that person expects, and then to mirror it back to them. I believe that's the reason why we're drawn to these people. It also explains why so many of the studies say much more about the person doing the writing than about the Lacandons themselves. Almost everyone involved feels our modern world can learn much from these jungle dwellers, especially when we watch them live in the old ways. The nature of the Lacandons is to be in harmony with that expression of simplicity. When they attempt to integrate the modern world for the purpose of survival, it often becomes a very destructive process as they lose a sense of cultural identity. On the other hand, when the modern world is integrated with a positive intent, there becomes a greater opportunity to develop as individuals. By taking the best parts of individual development and re-embracing the most positive aspects of their cultural traditions, the Lacandons can possibly be a model for other primitive cultures whose roots have been disturbed by an encroaching modern world.
A lot of people talk about, the Lacandons are just going to disappear, that there's so few of them, 800 members, that with the influence of outside cultures that, the language will disappear and there won't be Lacandons anymore. I think that's just is a misunderstanding. That, the traditional Lacandon sort of lost in the forest of 100 years ago, well, no, it doesn't exist and hasn't for a long time. But it's all cultures go through are constantly in a process of change, and the Lacandon culture isn't any different. And I don't think it will disappear. The Lacandon people have a very strong sense of themselves. I think the fact that they've managed to retain so much of our culture up to this point is testimony of the strength of the culture, and that it will continue on in some form.
We can assist by encouraging those Lacandons who are still practicing their traditions, and to remind the others of the beauty of their heritage, the virtue of embracing simplicity, and honoring their connection to the earth.